My old friend, Brian Pritchard. What's up, man?
Jay, good afternoon. Hello, CS leaders around the world. Jeff, how are you?
Good to see you, Brian.
Likewise.
All right, guys, we're going to get started here in just a minute. We usually get started around 11:32, but if you go into your chat real quickly, Jeff put a link in there to the Slido where we're sort of capturing the topics. If you wouldn't mind, if you haven't gone in there and voted up a topic that's interesting to you yet, I just want to give you the next couple minutes to do that. We're going to try to focus on a handful of topics today, and we'll start with the top of that list. So go register your interest. Good to see everyone.
Damien, glad you could join.
Hey, Jeff, how's it going?
Good.
Oh, man. We got a real powerhouse on here now. What's up, Damien?
What's up? That's man, that's a pressure introduction.
A lot of expectations here for you. First time on.
I don't want to disappoint.
Just one side note, as you guys are going to Slido, and the link is in the chat, but one of the things that we're going to try and do as well is take the questions that we don't answer and start to try and find ways to disseminate those, try and make sure that we can get some answers from some leaders across the room here. So even if you post a question and we don't get to it today, we are trying to actively cultivate that list and get back to it at some point. So.
All right, it's 11:32. So real quickly, a couple housekeeping things. First of all, welcome everybody. It's great to see all your beautiful faces from all around the world. If you don't mind, type in the chat where you're from. We always like to see that, where you're calling in from. But this is week 4 of CS Leadership Office Hours. We had talked about doing this for 4 weeks, and there's been such a great response to it, and I feel like people are getting some value. So we've talked about it. We're going to continue this for at least another 4 weeks after today. So we're definitely still working through ideas on how to break the groups up a little bit and maybe try to do some different things in terms of how we organize and generate conversation in between. But we're going to keep on going as long as there's an interest. So look forward to that. We are also looking at, just so you know, a platform for this. We've looked at some tools out there, looked at Slack, we've looked at, Facebook, LinkedIn, some other things. We're not like thrilled with any of those. So we've got some other ideas that we're working through right now in terms of how to get us sort of communicating in between. We all are on LinkedIn, I think, but maybe there's a more formal we could be doing that and going through some. So know that we're looking at that. If you have any ideas, feel free to shoot us a note. Like I always remind you, we're going to do a survey at the end of this. The feedback is really, really helpful. It helps us make adjustments to the format here. So, and keep it relevant and valuable. So please take a few minutes to do that. We've had a 60% plus response rate on that. So help us keep that high if you would. It'd be awesome. And then, some of the feedback we got last time and just, in general, some of the things that we're going to try to do on this, think about as you answer questions, trying to keep, your answers to a reasonable length. Some people have tons of value and knowledge to share, but we just want to make sure we have plenty of time to get through a bunch of topics. So going for about 60 or 90 seconds, it's probably good. Just maybe try to keep an internal timer in your head on that as we go. And then I think that's it. So we've got, if you haven't upvoted a topic yet on the Slido, you can still do that, but I think we're going to go ahead and probably jump in to the ones that we've got. So are you going to, Jeff's sharing that now. So the first topic that sort of rose up to the top of the list was courtesy of our friend David Ellen. But just in general, I know, we've talked about a lot of engagement techniques and a lot of ways to get figure out what's going on with our customers. But what's one thing? Well, let's see. Hold on. We might have a late breaking. Yeah. So what's one action? What's one customer success related action or process or tool that you've put in place over the past 4 weeks that you hadn't previously done that yielded a positive result? So if anybody's got some ideas to open us up with, we can start there.
I have a short one. We did a video of the entire team and we sent it to all our customers with a nice message. And I think that was a great, one more action to connect with customers. And I saw a few other companies done that. I think that's great.
Yeah. And Ziv, one question, I think you might've had a learning from that as well. If I'll put you on the spot there was a learning about some of the regional impacts and how that may have gone over. So
one thing that we did, we made sure not to send to any of our customers in Italy, Spain, and there was something specific about the video about another country. But anyhow, that was, we couldn't be sure. So I got some customers in Spain that got the video, they got the email, and they were very happy about that. So we tried to be sensitive, but it was very, very successful anyhow. So we got lots of great comments, and it's another way to connect with your customers. I'll share the link to the video in the chat soon.
Awesome. That was really good.
We had another Sarah Bocchino. I think I'm hopefully pronouncing that right, but she put in the chat that she has lost her voice due to allergies, but they had offered one complimentary strategy workshop to help customers see the light at the end of the tunnel and stay focused. So that's another idea that somebody's thrown out there as well.
Hey, Jeff, Jay, we've been doing virtual happy hours with our clients. They've been amazing because it kind of takes the focus off of the happenings, right, and business, and it's allowed us to access some new senior stakeholders that were not coming into the fold under business circumstances. We set the Zoom background to the location of our client and do a 30-minute casual interaction with drinks. And you don't have to drink, of course, but it's been a hit.
I like that. I like the Zoom idea too, trying to use the technology to your advantage.
Damien, did you customize that for each customer? Meaning office hour was collective or customized?
Per client. So our clients are municipalities. So we did relatively intimate, like 6-7 people happy hour with the city of Toronto or, Austin or so on and so forth. It's been a nice close quarters interaction.
Hey, Jay. I got something we implemented. So one of the things that we implemented during this time, we knew that our CSMs needed to be more proactive with our customers, especially during this time. And so we created the CSM aid department and had 2 people come from BDC to help with administration tasks and support tickets and stuff, so they could be more proactive with planning with their customers and actually having more meetings in a day.
Very cool. Who was that? I couldn't find you on the Zoom.
Oh, it's Regan Hinchcliffe. Yeah.
Hey, Regan.
Hi.
Yeah, just quickly, guys, it's Alex from a company called IncoPro. So our situation is a little bit unique in that we do online intellectual property enforcement, which is relevant for a lot of our customers in like the pharma, and like we work with customers even in the PPE space who are having their products infringed, which is super topical at the moment, obviously. So on a more serious note, we have a pretty targeted campaign for our customers in industries that are most impacted by COVID, and essentially have taken staff off of BDR. Even like, everybody's working from home at the moment, so office administrators, and they're getting into the system and providing intelligence to our customers. So taking kind of a really hands-on proactive approach as a kind of all hands on deck, just trying to mirror the kind of focus and ethos of our customers who are kind of going through the crisis. So it's been a hit, so to speak, but they've been very appreciative, and it just deepens the relationship.
I want to touch on what Alex said. Kevin Leonore, Ring Central here. One thing that we did also as well was reach out to our customers and use the features that we have that are our best practices that would fit the work from home environment that they have. So utilizing our collaboration tools and also creating a team within that collaboration tool between me and the customer. So that way we can have that open channel, and I'm giving live examples of how to be able to use that collaboration tool by assigning myself tasks, doing at mentions. So being able to relay some of those features now in a work from home setting has also helped with the engagement with the customer.
One idea, this is Jessica Tedgy. I'm from a firm, and we do pay over time with different verticals. And one of the verticals we work with is travel. And as you can imagine, things are not that great there right now. But one thing that really struck me is one of our CSNs said, our clients still want to have weekly meetings because they're loving the data our insights team has provided them. You know, we all know unemployment data and some of them big macro, but we're able to see trends, like what are things, just for example, like our booking dates much further out. They're either 1 day out or they're 90 days out when normally. So just keeping that engagement and giving them industry-wide trends as much as you can provide without giving away your secret sauce. But I think everyone just going a little bit above and beyond what you share. And doing that has really been like, I still want to talk to you weekly, even though we know we can't do a lot of things we normally would, has been really fruitful. And we've tried to implement that across other verticals as well.
Hey, this is Gotham Sani. Kind of similar to what I've heard on the call, what we've done is introduce opportunity planning sessions. So for some of our key clients, we've gone back and said, okay, what is the success criteria that you're trying to achieve? And how can we help you achieve that? So bringing their goals to the front and then seeing how our metrics align. And that's been really helpful. And it's kind of evolving the CSMs to be more in that partnership mode right now. And we're getting a lot of great questions. I've got great feedback and good conversations.
Yeah, something we've been doing. This is Ed Oliver. By the way, thanks for having me on. First time here. I work at a company called Data Miner. We've been particularly useful and critical for our clients as a real-time information source. So we've done two things. One is we've been super proactive around client feedback and their needs, and we've turned around new topics and new features in their products in incredibly short periods of time. That has just literally been responsive to what they needed specifically around coronavirus and COVID-19. And then the other thing we've done is we've done a fair amount of proactive outreach with short videos and trainings that we would typically do on a longer call or in person, but know that they don't have a lot of time. We've just created these very short ways for them to get what they need in short clips, and then give them access to the CSM team if they want to get into a little bit more deeper when they have more time. So just this responsiveness of realizing how important the tool is to them right now and monitoring what's going on in the world. We just try to be incredibly proactive around that sort of stuff and very accessible.
Yeah, I completely agree. So it's Beth Twigger from Blue Optima. So we provide software developer productivity metrics. So in the working from home world, this has been quite a boom in the interest. And we've used our global data set to show the productivity dips in China and provide that data to our clients to say, this is probably what's coming as a best case scenario in the software development locations that you have as a business. So they've been able to kind of use that to predict impact. And normally we would kind of charge for that in some case, or at least ask for time. In this scenario, people don't have that much time. They have a lot of priorities. So we've been providing that basically for free as kind of goodwill to build that relationship and drive a bit more interaction.
I know we've talked a lot about the customer angle here. Is there anything that any examples that you have about how you've tried to, the cliche word, right? Like keep your team engaged in this virtual environment. And I'm sure everyone's, read the hundreds of articles that are now part of the content syndication world that are going rampant, but anything unique that you feel like you've been able to do to kind of keep your team engaged, keep them excited, keep them understanding of, what our metrics are. I think it's just as much as an uncertain time for your employees. So I'm curious if there's anything out there that you guys have done to kind of stay connected with them and make sure that they understand kind of where the company sits, what are risks, what are, positive outlooks that are coming.
Yeah, we're doing things that are, this is Jaron Stevens, by the way, with Client Success. And thanks for letting me join too, guys. We hold morning stand-ups for 15 minutes with the immediate CSM team. Then, of course, we have a 15-minute leadership stand-up. And each one of those, on top of just connecting personally, because everyone needs to feel connected while they're all working from home in somewhat of a siloed environment. We talk about the goals and the metrics every single morning. How is everyone doing? How are you doing on your success criteria with your customers? How are you doing on what we call Corvettes, which are core valued engagement touches? So I always talk about how are you doing driving your Corvettes, right? That's a fun one to use. So something we do is just we stay connected on daily stand-ups every single morning, and we bring up the metrics.
Awesome. Thanks, Jaron.
Does anybody have any formal communication? Jeff and I were recording a podcast earlier this morning about just communication methods internally. Is anybody sending out daily emails or briefings, or even multiple times a week? Are you sending videos to your teams? We thought those were great ways to engage that are sort of low cost but high impact at this point in time, especially if you have a globally distributed team. Like, I know, Ziv, you've got people all over the world, right?
Hi, Jay. This is Alicia Carsriad from CB4. One of the things that we're doing, we have a team in 3 different countries, is we've created an escalation tracker for COVID specific through Smartsheet. And what we can actually do is create notifications within that Smartsheet so that different executives are getting particular information that they want, either if there's an ask from them or there's an account that they're really interested in. It also allows the team to see exactly what's going on across the board. It's not something we would probably typically do if we were all in the office together, but it's been one way that we've been able to stay in sync.
Do you think you'll keep that after this begins to pass and everybody gets back into the office?
That's a great question. I think that we'll probably use it very differently. We'll probably use it for a very small percentage of customers, which is right now we're doing that more generally. But there have been some really good learnings about it, and our CEO is loving it because he can get notified for particular topics. It's also allowing our product team to see what types of things are really relevant for our customers. So I would say it's created a lot of internal alignment, not just within our CS team, but actually broader within the company.
Yeah, that's great. We once worked with a company whose CEO got a Slack message every time a user was removed from an account. It was crazy. So too much visibility can be scary for CEOs, right? But yeah, that's really, really interesting. I think it's a good segue into our next topic. I'll go ahead and sort of push us down that path, which is, is anybody considering implementing technology? Like the Smartsheet example is a really good one. But is anybody committing to a CS platform at this point? Or is this a good time to put that on hold? How are you guys thinking about that?
I'll take a stab. Jeff and I had an awesome meeting, a quick sync after the last office hours, where we talked through because of the ambiguity of some of the financial things, and even just from our past learnings, I want to make sure I'm super solid on the things that I'm measuring before I even commit to a software. That hasn't changed, right? Before or after committing to one. And so something I'm actually doing is devoting a little bit more time, the time that we would have spent maybe going on site, to just do it manually. It's a little painful, but it's the good kind of pain where you kind of learn what's the priority. And so something we started doing even, which is what I want from a software, is what percentage of our MRR is read from our clients, and providing a customer pulse report, aptly named CPR, in preparation for our leadership. So that's just something we're doing manually right now. So then by the time we get to the recovery part of this, we'll have a much clearer perspective for what we expect in a software.
That's a really good point. Just to jump into that, just quickly about being things that have turned red. In the UK, I know it's maybe a little bit different in the US, but in the UK, we have the ability to furlough some staff if required, and our finance team is busy crunching numbers, and the key thing for us is making sure that they're crunching numbers with our financial reality as opposed to the doom and gloom that can kind of creep in. So to your point, really important for us to give. I'm sending a once every 2 days forecasts of what we think the revenue for the month is going to look like, so they can make informed decisions, because more than ever, that connection to the finance team is actually impacting these people's potential livelihoods. So it's really important to sink in there.
Yeah, that's a good point, Alex. We, as Jay and I, here's another podcast plug for you guys, but we, as we were recording this morning too, what we talked about is how that financial aspect obviously too goes up into that board meeting. Like, I'm imagining people, I'm sure there's been board meetings happening already at organizations that are private equity or venture capital backed, or even just have, investors at some kind. But I think what was interesting when we talked through it this morning too is, what do you really go into that board meeting about? And I think it goes down to your point, Alex, about, hey, here's what the reality is, and here's how we're defending kind of our metrics and, our health score, and thinking about just where we're going in terms of the revenue projections and how we're feeding finance, like feeling really concrete on those, so that you have a sense of confidence walking into that room and can really talk through that in detail. But I think that becomes hugely important if you have a board meeting upcoming here in the next couple of weeks for Q1.
Yeah, I'd love to add more here. I think that you need to think about when and what you want to implement, but I think it's usually people are looking at some platforms and they just start to implement the platform without first looking what you want to achieve. And what you want to achieve is, I think we need here, and maybe more people will add to that, what are the buckets of things that we are trying to achieve here. So we want some metrics to measure, and those measurements can be tied to a goal of what is the KPI of the customer success manager, or something that we want to drive. We want to build some. So we speak about those things differently, each and every one here, but in the end, it's some, I call it processes. So it says many different processes of what the CSMs are actually doing in their day-to-day, and we want to make sure that we're driving those. And I think that most of us are very busy these days, that it will be very hard for us to implement that in a regular day, that it will be very hard for us to implement it today. And my last thought about that, I think that you should always keep it as simple as possible and release the most simplistic things. And as I wrote also in the chat for what Jung said, I believe in starting manual, making sure it works, and then continue.
So can I just add a point? One of the biggest things about implementing a system is you have to get, as Ziv said, the design right. But a lot of the reasons that systems fail is because people don't get trained and coached on how to use it effectively. And I think that's something you've got to consider quite carefully at the moment. If you're a company where remote working is the norm, it's not new for you, so training people remotely, coaching people remotely, working with them remotely, that's not a change in what you're doing. If, however, you're thinking about implementing this and remote work is completely new to you, then you really need to think hard about how you're going to get that adoption from your CSMs. Otherwise, your investment won't be wasted, but could perhaps be ineffective in its first few months.
I'd add one more piece to that. This is David Allen. I'd add one more piece to that. And that is, a lot of times systems fail because people rush into them without a good design and don't think about the metrics that they need in advance. They get started, they start figuring out how to generate reports, and they go, oh my God, we didn't figure out a way to measure this. So I would say, before you implement a system, figure out what the critical things are that you want to measure. Make sure you have a way to measure them before you kick off your system, so that you can get easy access to that data and those analytics afterwards, so you can take actionable actions after that.
And I'll add just a supporting comment. This is Jaron again, as we are a platform, a CRM platform and client success. Our most successful customers come into the purchase of client success with a plan. those that struggle with adoption are those that come in expecting the platform to help them put a plan together. They need to know what they want before they purchase whatever platform it is, whether it's us or another platform. And then creating visibility and accountability. And right now, it's going to sound a little backwards as I say it. It's actually easier to create visibility and accountability because everyone's relying on the tools versus just simply always meeting face-to-face in a room and talking about it. They walk out of the room and then forget about some things. Everyone's relying on these online SaaS tools of some kind so that that data is captured. So in my humble opinion, of course, this is a great time to have a CSM decision, but you need to have a plan before you purchase that CSM platform.
Yep. Completely agree. And I think the one thing we see with metrics a lot is that getting to a real, like, what is a leading metric for your business and for your customers? That's a really important thing. Oftentimes we talk about things like renewal and retention and even expansion and upsell, or even NPS. And those are all lagging metrics in some way to a bunch of other things that are happening upstream. So, I think that's a way to take the CS team into a much more action-oriented, measurable kind of way. Ziv talks about this a lot with results. Hey, Christy, I'm curious your perspective on this. I could have guessed, you probably could have guessed I was going to call you out on this.
Probably, yes. So we're in the process of deploying Gainsight. This is my second deployment, fourth company using it. So I've got a good handle on what good looks like for our business. Very similar to what the other leaders have called out. Obviously, having done this several times in transforming businesses, I have a good handle on what the infrastructure of the system needs to look like in order for it to be very effective, not only for reporting and analysis, but then also from a usability standpoint for my CSMs, right? How do we operationalize all of their activities through the technology? So we put a lot of effort into designing our customer journey, all of our metrics, reporting, engagement models, segmentation, all of that is pre-designed and built and approved and operationalized around before we can figure it into our system. And then everything that we do and have built in Gainsight, and we're actually in the process of, we just completed UAT testing this morning and hopefully go live in the next 2 weeks. We've got a fully baked system that's actually going to meet the needs of everyone, right? Our leadership team getting that visibility that they hadn't before, our CSM team being able to drive operational efficiency and how they run and manage their book of business. And then obviously from my standpoint, leading that team, as well as our mid-management team, being able to really get a handle on where the areas that we need to dive into and how do we help and kind of coach them. So we've done a lot of work in that regard. But to everyone's point, right? Like you have to know where you're going before you can go and deploy this. I do a lot of references for Gainsight, just having had the experience and used it before. And I will tell you, most of the leaders I speak to, their biggest challenge is that they really just don't know what they don't know. And so when they ask me about what onboarding looks like and what their deployment timeline should look like and what they should be building, the reality of it is that they're coming to this conversation with me, not having a good handle on any of that. And they're asking me, well, what did you build and how did you structure this? And I'm happy to give people that feedback, but I will tell you, no deployment of Gainsight across 4 companies that I've worked at has looked the same, because it should be very unique and tailored to the organization and what it is that you're trying to achieve and what you're trying to structure there. So I would just say, like, there are best practices for every solution, and there's probably some key things every CS org should be doing. But until you have a good handle on your business and your customers and defining what that looks like, you really, you're not going to be successful. And then you see the failure rate for those deployments pretty high.
Totally. Any other thoughts on deploying systems? Is anybody deploying something that's not like technically a CS platform? Like, are you using Salesforce? Are you using HubSpot? How are you making those tools work for your business right now when it may be difficult to go out and for something new?
This is Gotham. We're relatively on the smaller side, and so we're using Salesforce to kind of force fit a model to give the visibility to mid and executive leadership. So previously to joining each of the CSMs, we're kind of focusing in a bit of a silo and working with our key customers. And so now we're building, a quick 1-week project to provide that visibility in Salesforce and using a little bit of Google Sheets, and it's providing a lot of great insight and allowing us to take some decisions quicker. And to the point the person speaking previously, jumping into kind of a multi-figure deal with Gainsight or another CSM platform, I think enabling those processes and defining those processes, it's better spent if you deploy the time that way before just thinking a technology can fix a broken process.
Yeah, hi, this is Elizabeth from Glassbox. So what we've been doing, because I'm setting up a new team at a new company, I've been there for like about 3 months. We started using Salesforce. We do have a plan to have potentially a CS platform later on in Q3. But for now, we needed to really look at Salesforce as our truth in terms of like collecting more data. So we're expanding the use of Salesforce, and we've been complementing a lot of it with using Monday.com. Monday.com was a new platform that we started adopting about a month ago, and we've started creating a lot of dashboards. And Monday.com has a lot of integrations for different like support portals as well as Salesforce. So we've been pulling a lot of data into Monday.com to provide greater visibility to everyone else, because there's a viewer account that you can have on Monday.com, so we can save at least on the license. Salesforce is more expensive. So we have been able to provide visibility to the wider groups into what's going on and tracking activities, projects, slice and dicing the our customer base, and even putting a plan for renewal that we can track and work in collaboration with the different sales teams. So it's a combination, and also obviously using Slack as well for activities.
I know, I don't know if Nils is still on. I was going to put him on the spot for a minute. He might have had to jump off. He had to jump off at the top of the hour. I was going to ask him, but anybody else have thoughts or using, platforms that are not maybe traditional CS platforms? I'm curious too. Oh, sorry. Go ahead. I'll let you go.
Yeah. So we were using Salesforce. So what we did was, we got a lot of data into BigQuery and then pushed a lot of the user data that we thought was, really important for the customer success managers to know around the key activities that our customers do on the product within Salesforce. So now they can create reports, and then we have built certain triggers based on, we call it engagement bucket internally and an engagement score. So, as it goes up and down, they can have a sort of idea of, what's going on in the accounts and use that to write CSM account notes, which is again in Salesforce, and really build a process there. We had Natero before, but we actually kind of backtracked to Salesforce because, keeping the process simple plays a very important role in the effectiveness of it being adopted across the org as well. So you're able to get a lot of stakeholders using the platform more extensively because of that. And right now we're looking at procuring a couple of tools. So I just wrote about it, like we are procuring front because email collaboration is something really important, and it really got highlighted because of COVID, because you need a lot of teams kind of communicating with each other. So right now we're looking at what are the small pieces that we need to fix, and looking at SaaS tools specifically to kind of, help us with those problems.
So you guys went the other way. You started with the platform and you moved back, sounds like.
Yeah.
And you're, okay, that's very cool. BigQuery is something I heard there. Would love to hear more about that at some point.
Hey, Jay, it's Dave Duke. Good to be with you. And just to build on the last couple of comments, I really like the focus on collaboration, thinking about ways to stay close to customers. We have our internal needs, but we really need to think about ways that we're collaborating in the right context with customers to ensure that we're focused on what matters most to them. So I think that emphasis on collaboration is great. Love to keep that conversation going over time.
So feeding off of Dave's comment, one of the companies that I'm talking to has started using Slido as a collaboration tool across their company, across their customers. They do a lot of webinars, and because everybody is at home now, they're trying to step up the number of webinars that they do, and they're running out of topics. So they started putting some ideas out on Slido and letting their customer base vote on the topics that they want to see come up in more webinars in the future. And that's how they're deciding how to prioritize their future webinars.
Yeah, just to add to that, David, Chris Mitchell here. I was VP of CS at On24 for a long time. And we used to use a very similar process where getting feedback from your whole customer base around the whole area of conversation you want, it almost becomes a content generation tool for you, where they actually provide input. You can then start to build programs around it, build a webinar around it that's all customer generated. And then off the back of that, you create white papers, you create podcasts and everything else. So actually that becomes part of your content generation process as you move forward with your customer base.
Yeah, that's great. And I should have plugged this up front, but Slido has like contributed their product to our little effort here. So I'm glad you plugged them, David. We appreciate those guys immensely. I think that's a good segue into the next topic here too, which is how are you defining the roles of the sales and CS folks? We heard a little bit earlier, somebody mentioned about using BDRs in the engagement process with the customer base right now, but also in terms of the CSM role itself, is anybody else using them in a way to sort of also accelerate marketing efforts for the organization, whether it's through these customer stories that are, I mean, everybody should be doing customer stories and advocacy, but are there specific ways that your CSMs are getting involved with that, especially right now? There's also some comments in the chat about that. So curious to hear thoughts on that front.
Yeah, no, one of the things that we've done.
Go ahead, Kyle.
Yeah, you're good, Kyle. Go for it, man.
Oh, sweet. Thank you. So one of the things that we've done in the past is actually incorporate that into a playbook of sorts. So coming from the former director of CS at Ad Shoppers, we were actually a client success customer. And one of the things that we did with them early on was make sure that when we were going through and building out our playbooks, a big part of that was actually working into some marketing elements and starting to do, you know, a lot of people will track like marketing qualified leads, and we wanted to do the same thing from a CS perspective. And so we actually built that into playbooks where after we hit a certain level of metric that we were tracking, it was just one of those things where the CSM would then sort of organically reach out and say, you know, hey, we want to do a joint paper, a joint piece, a video, or, you know, something like that. And that actually worked really well as far as tying into the marketing team. I know Damien over at Passport has done a lot with his team on the sales side as far as expansion goes. And so, you know, he was really successful in that as well.
Hey, Kyle.
Hey, Damien.
Yeah, so we've done, I was going to chime in regardless. We've done a lot with partnering across the organization. So for any upsells are handled exclusively by client success end to end. That's everything from engaging and executing and contract. Cross sells are partnered with sales. So client success, customer success locates the opportunity, creates it in Salesforce, and delivers it to the sales organization. And sales is responsible for cross-selling. As far as partnerships with like marketing and so on and so forth, we groom through all of our promoters from our NPS, and marketing leverages the promoters to do case studies, video case studies, interviews, references, so on and so forth. So we've had a lot of partnerships in that sense. And in the last 3 or 4 weeks, we've, so Passport services, as I mentioned earlier, only predominantly municipalities in the parking and transportation space, and a lot of it has just completely shut down. So we've been focusing on the reemergence of the industry after the slowdown or the pandemic, if you will, and we've been pulling together city or municipal leaders to produce like a webinar panel to educate the remainder of the industry as to how to reemerge from this present slowness in this present situation. So that's been our focus, has not been on how to handle it today, but how to handle the rapid increase as we come back out.
Damien, one question just around the cross-sell piece that you mentioned, where kind of customer success will log it in Salesforce, it gets routed to the sales rep. how does that look like? How does that process look, moving forward after that? I guess, is the sales rep typically already familiar with the account? Do they have a deep dive with the CSM or CSE, whoever's on that account, to try and collaborate and kind of get brought back in at the right relationship and at the right time? Like, I don't know if you can just talk through a little bit of those steps about how they.
Yeah, so there's a lot of automation behind the scenes with Salesforce that routes it and notifies and assigns the sales rep. But then there is an internal alignment. Most of our cross sells are going to be anywhere from 100K ARR up to probably 500,000 or 600,000 K ARR. So we do take the necessary steps behind the scenes before we engage sales. And then we have leveraged BDR on some smaller cross sells, but the vast majority of it is done side by side with CS and sales throughout the remainder of the cross sell. And what we're trying to do is persist the relationship of CS as a strategic partner, and then sales can go in and come out either successful or not on that cross sell and persist that relationship with CS.
Awesome.
Yeah, the context of this question actually went into like, how are we organizing? And I've seen a lot of talk about like getting aggressive about upselling and cross-selling right now. And frankly, it struck me a little bit odd that was a focus at the moment. So I don't know. I mean, how many people are actually focused on that? Maybe it is for a lot of companies. It just surprised me when I saw it. So does anybody really like have a great opportunity in terms of expansion sales right now? I mean, you don't have to talk about it if it's, trade secret, of course, but.
This is Christy. So I'll jump in there quickly for our business. So we are in the fleet telematics space, so industrial IoT. And we've got a lot of our customers who are growing their business right now because they're in transportation, right? Like in logistics. So they're adding on additional assets to their fleets. So as a result, just for obviously helping get goods to different locations, they're adding on different vehicles. So we are expanding a lot in that regard, where we're having to help them bring on new assets and connect those. So from an expansion standpoint, there's a lot of that. And then we also modularize the product. So there is a safety component of our product that we sell. And safety has a lot of different functionalities, whether it's like speeding or hazardous driving, but there's also a component that we released with our EDVIR, which is inspection, which I think I talked about last week. But having this as a component that's available for our customers, they're adding this on because they want to be able to have a way to make sure that their vehicles and their operators are safe during this time. So we've actually seen a lot of growth in that regard. Now, different parts of our customer base, different verticals like limousine companies and buses, definitely not the area that we're having this conversation. So we've been very strategic about making sure that any messaging or any communication or strategies, playbooks are only being deployed to our essential customer industries, and then ones where we believe that it's going to be a fit and a good need right now.
Yep. Makes total sense, Christy. And, we almost got into this topic in a real deep way on the last call, but I mean, I think there's some strong opinions. This is like the quintessential discussion we have in this space, but how much should we be focused on revenue generation versus relationship generation in support of that? But Ziv, I know you have some strong opinions on it. Seems like your team is you drive commercial results, but they don't have necessarily commercial KPIs. So maybe talk about that for a second.
Sure. So we are actually speaking a little bit about that in the chat, so you'll be able to see later. I think the main thing is what's your focus. So one company can focus customer success on revenue, and that's fine. I think when your product is broad, the product value is broad, and you have lots of values, then you can and you should focus customer success on value. And then I think that us focusing on value around 2 years ago, we were very fortunate to do that, because we are now driving both non-premium and premium value to customers. And that means that we are pushing on more and more customer value. So it can be some medium customer today that might not have the great budget, but we will drive them to get some non-premium features, and it will drive them in a year to buy more of our products and generate more and more revenue.
So how do you think about compensation then, Ziv? Are they just base salary, or are they, well, he might have had to go handle a home issue?
I'm here. I just shut the door.
I got a
Yeah.
dog
So-
scratching at my door right now, by the way.
Yeah. So on the comp side, and again, like we have base and variable in countries where base and variable is usual, like in the US, UK, and other places. We are paying yearly that the variable component, and it's not directly because of the upsell indication or the feature adoption indication. We're looking at some parameters. I like to look at customer success managers and how they grew this year. Are they getting more mature? Their discussions, the things that they drive some projects, not the specific MBO, but some projects. But in the end, it's one component that I look at, and how much value they drove, and also how consistent it was. And I think from there you can take that. I think that looking at someone and how they develop themselves, and how better are they now in speaking with customers, in getting customers interested. I think that's one thing from lots of things that you need to see. And the team leader knows more than me, and I take also their input.
All right. All paths seem to lean back to that topic. So, but interesting, topic that comes along with that was right after this is how technical should these guys be? And it's a broader discussion, I think, but that really hits on the other side of it. How much support should they be doing? And, especially right now, are we wanting them to solve support problems, or are we wanting them to drive engagement with the clients? Like, what is your leading indicator for your CSMs?
Hey Jay, it's Melissa. In my past roles, what I've seen is having the CSM.
Hey, hold on. I'm sorry to cut you off real quick. We got somebody typing in the background, and then you're very quiet, whoever that was talking. So if you could maybe get closer to your mic, and then everybody else, if you could mute, thank you.
It's Melissa. Can you hear me now?
Yep, we got you.
Okay. So in my past roles, I have found that it's almost critical for a CSM to have enough technical knowledge to be able to identify kind of an area where there's a problem and be able to ask questions. They may not be able to solve the problem, but to be able to ask questions, to dive into it a little bit more, to gather information, to then take back to the technical teams that can then go and solve it. That way you eliminate the need to go back and forth many times, as being in that conduit to help them get that problem solved. You can shorten up that time. So they should have enough, depending on what's going on. Shoot, get out of here. To be able to drive a conversation and facilitate the information getting over to the technical teams. Sorry, I just had a bird nibbling on my toes.
No worries. It sounds like you got a menagerie over there. And I think that's part of like having a solid support function in place to really augment that front end of things. So I didn't want to belabor that point too long, but I think one of the things that sort of goes with some of the commercial discussions we were having is, are there any new strategies emerging to how you're sort of working with customers to stay during the downturn? I know that was a high question on the list. So anybody have any thoughts on that, or trying anything new in that area that we haven't discussed yet, or that you haven't discussed on this forum yet? We'd love to hear that.
Hi, Jay. This is Sherry Srebnick. We're in an interesting position, the company that I work for, because we are a global SEO and content marketing platform. So obviously we have clients in lots of verticals like travel and things that are being hit. But one of the things we're seeing, and obviously we're in a unique position because of the opportunity for marketers, where you're seeing a lot of shift out of things like events and paid, and a lot of those things where you just can't do them right now, or you're trying to reduce your spend. and they're pushing it into organic, or they're realizing that they were way far behind on organic search and where they sit out there in brand awareness. So it really has, for us, been able to right now speak to our current clients and enabled our sales team to have a little bit of a different conversation about what are you doing to remain relevant? Because if you let your SEO and your content slip, your competitors are going to take advantage of that, and you're going to potentially lose more. You have to stay on top of it. Now is not the time to pull back. And right now for paid search, we're seeing CPCs, some of the lowest it's been in decades. And it's going to bounce back and be astronomical when things start to level out. So if you let your organic search and you let those types and your content marketing slip now, you're going to be scrambling and so far behind when things start to normalize, because you're going to have to spend even more than you did before to come back. So for us, it's having those types of conversations, but also looking at the different verticals and thinking by vertical, what's the type of content their audience wants to hear? And how can we help them with that using our software? So like I said, for us, we're in a kind of a unique position because we're seeing opportunities for not just upgrades, but for our current customers and even in talking to prospects. But it's getting them to understand that this isn't the time to let up and, you know, to start thinking about not just now, but what it's going to look like down the road.
Yeah, totally. And how, you know, the thing we have to do is make sure all of our CSMs have that talk track and are confident in that talk track. And sometimes it's hard to get that. So how are you enabling that, you know, distribution of that talk track? Are you guys having explicit discussions about that with your team and rolling that out formally?
We are. We've been having this conversation for the last few weeks as a company, what it looks like for us globally and also for us specifically here in the US. So this has been coming from the top down. Our current CEO, our global CEO who joined only a couple of months ago, he came from one of his past roles was one of the major EMEA executives for DoubleClick. So he understands that, and we've been kind of pushing that to everybody, sharing what works, even for our consulting teams, offering, you know, bringing them into those conversations and having, you know, maybe doing some minor pro bono work for these clients and having those conversations. So we've been, I would say, organically, even though we're organic search, organically having those conversations with our clients anyway.
Yep.
Just because it makes sense even for the nature of our business. So it's not something that we've had to like push hard. It's our team has just kind of jumped on it, and we're all at this point information sharing, what works, what hasn't, where have they seen traction. So it's been a really all hands on deck, and everyone's been doing a great job with it.
That's great.
Yeah, I don't think it's a single talk track. I think that's probably a mistake that some people are making. One of the things that what's happening at the moment is doing is it's changing customer context. So some customers are struggling, retail, travel, people like that. Actually, some parts of retail are doing really, really well, and their biggest challenge is how to meet the massive growth that they're facing. And I think one of the things we've got to do in leading our organizations from a customer success perspective is say, let's understand the changed context of the customer, and then start to build our talk tracks, as you call them, around those different contexts. So for customers where their biggest struggle at the moment is how do I cope with all this new business, that may well be a different message to the customers that are on their knees. And unless we start to put this from, you know, outside in, customer first, we ain't doing what we're supposed to be doing. We're not customer focused. We're just doing, you know, let's push our message out however. Let's put it in the customer's context first. I think we might be a little bit better off then.
Totally. We've been calling it thriving, striving, or surviving. Like you're in one of those categories, right? And yeah, we should have different talk tracks, different approaches for each of them. Anybody else have anything that they're doing relative to that with your renewals?
Jay, so this is Christy again. So for our long tail, for our smaller customers, which is like a VSMB kind of market, and it makes up, I'd probably say like 80% of our logos overall with the 3,500 customer logo base. For a lot of those, especially ones that are in like limo, transportation, busing, where they're supporting EDUs that have all kind of closed their doors. If they are coming up for renewal, we're offering them a reduction in all of their rates. We've adjusted all of our payment terms. For some of them, we've given them the ability to exit if they are in contract right now. So really kind of meeting them where they need to be met. If a customer is coming to us and they're basically shutting their doors or they're in dire straits, like we're not holding them to early termination fees. We're not holding them to contracts. We're really working with them. And then we're also we're leaving the door open for them should they want to come back within the next 6 months or so. So we're trying to be flexible for customers where we
I found
can
a
be.
customer success.
I hope he says nice things.
I know. I think you killed the mute button.
So we're trying to really kind of meet those customers where they need to be met. And then obviously we've got a lot of customers who are thriving. And so for those customers, obviously incentivizing them with new products that they can take advantage of and offering that at no additional cost just to kind of get them to see and drive more value. So whether it be from our inspection software, which we've just kind of gone to market with, or even things like cameras, things like that, where they want to have video recordings of like our operators actually cleaning and sterilizing their vehicles for the next driver, things like that. So anything that makes sense, we're trying to accommodate our customers during this time and be as flexible as possible, whether they're in that thriving, surviving bucket kind of category.
Yep. David, Ellen, I'll put you on the spot. You said it well in our very first or very second call that we had. Customers are going to remember how we treated them. The market is going to remember how we treated customers right now, right? And so I'll let you add comments to that if you feel like it.
Yeah, I mean, that's exactly right. Every time I talk to a customer, everything they seem to say is, I remember what you did for me last time. That's the one thing that's stuck in my mind. And if we don't remember that now and we don't learn from lessons we've had in the past and do that now, we're going to suffer for it. Because you got to bet your competitors are out there trying to do that exactly right. And I just want to go back to something that Christy just said, and I put it in the chat. Meet customers where they are. That is so critical. It's not a one size fits all. And if you try to take one segment of customers and you try to box them into another segment in the way you're treating another segment, you're going to have a big mistake in how you deal with that segment. So you've got to look at everybody individually. And you've got to have empathy. I put that in the chat also. And if you can't do that, your competitors are going to get a huge advantage over you.
I think it's interesting. HubSpot has talked about this a couple of times, and it's a really big part of their own mantra where you don't block the exit. You don't use your feet to keep the door shut. You actually use your feet to keep the door open. And that's a really big difference because you're 100% right. They are going to remember how we treat them at this point in time. And, for the ones that are close to shutting their doors, you don't necessarily lock them in. You just say, hey, we're going to be here for you when this turns around and it's going to be okay. And that's going to be one of those things that I think is going to elevate a lot of firms when we do come out of this from a CS perspective is how did you treat them right here? And did you block the exit or did you hold the door open for them? And I think, if you hold the door open for them, they're going to make their way back in too.
Absolutely. Some of the best customer stories that I have are customers that came back to me after they had canceled because they thought the grass was greener somewhere else, and we treated them well and they came back. Awesome. So it's about 12:28. 12:28 Eastern time. We've been trying to end these right on time to be respectful of your time. I am thrilled to have seen so many faces on here, people that I've long recognized and interacted with on LinkedIn and other places. So thank you guys. We're going to go ahead and send out another survey again. So please take that. And we also send detailed notes and sort of a transcript of the chat in the video as well. So you can send it around to folks who weren't able to join. And then we're going to put up a spot on our website for you to go pull down all the other videos from the other sessions we've done. If you want to go back, there's been some good discussion about like really tactical things about how we handle renewals and that type of thing that you might want to go back and watch. Other than that, thank you all so much for your time. Please fill in the survey and we will see you next week, same time, same place.
Hey Jay, if the guitar is in the background at the start of the next one next week, we're going to expect a song.
All right. I'll send your request in as well. We'll add it to the survey.
All right.
Hey, Chris.
Bye, everyone. Take care.
Christy,
Bye,
sorry
guys.
about cutting you off
Thank
there.
you,
but I
everyone.
have a
No,
microphone.
it's fine.
Thanks for all
Bye,
your
guys.
great feedback. Bye.
Thank
Bye.
you.